Repressed rage. When the patient man finally broke. Story 1. When I was in high school, an upper-class men at my all-male student Catholic school followed a female teacher into the bathroom and tried to rape her. She screamed initially before he pulled a knife on her. The gentlest, most caring, socially awkward Latin teacher heard the scream and rushed from his classroom straight into the women's restroom. He clocked this kid across the face and dragged him out by his collar into the hall. Then he checked on traumatized female teacher later. He just went back to class and continued teaching as though nothing happened. Dude knows 7 languages, has never dated anyone, and is a brilliant, always calm man. People gained a lot of respect for him after that day. He's still really weird though. Story 2. Me and a few of my friends used to frequent a pub in my hometown. It was a small place in the town center, a traditional English pub, complete with attractive barmaid and consistent regulars, us included. Every time we were in there, a guy would be sat at the bar on his own, with a half a bitter. He'd occasionally join the banter, but was never loud or drunk. He was a nice bloke, always said hello and smiled. We knew him only as Ray. Now Ray was about 60. Biffit not big, just a normal-looking guy, a few forearm tattoos, pretty standard for the north of England. In the 90s, one Saturday afternoon, me and 4 of my friends were having our usual couple of drinks. As it was Saturday, there was a football match on, 3 away fans. Walk into the pub, already a brave move. But this is a friendly place. Everyone eyes them suspiciously, but carries on drinking. They walk to the bar and immediately start being horrible to the barmaid, making lewd comments, complaining loudly about the beer, etc. Ray looks at these 3 guys and says, "No need to be rude, boys. She's here to do a job cue." A stream of verbal abuse from the away fans. "Shut the frick up, granddad. What you gonna do about it," etc. The regulars are having none of this. Everyone, me included, stands up and stares at these idiots. Ray turns to everyone and just says, "Sit down, lads, I'll deal with this." Turns to the away fans, "You 3 outside now." These 3 guys, obviously there for a fight anyway, are all frickin' come on. "Then granddad, let's go." They all walk out of the bar, and not 20 seconds later, Ray walks back in. Without a word, sits back on his stool and sips his half of a bitter. Curiosity got the better of us, so we all ran outside to see complete carnage. 2 guys out cold on the pavement, one on his backside with blood pouring out of his nose. It turns out that Ray was ex-sass, and the barmaid was his daughter. That went from 0 awesome in an instant. Story 3. My dad, about a decade ago, while I was in high school, we lived on a hill, and if you go down the hill, it leads into the main part of town, where all the shops and stuff are. And if you go up over the other side, it's where a lot of the bars and clubs are. It's quicker to go over than around. Obviously, back then, my parents each had a car instead of sharing one and only one space in the garage, and drunk idiots were constantly damaging Mom's car. Well, one night, Dad happened to have a day off fall on the weekend, and he could hear a group of drunk people walking up the road. His little office computer room is at the very front of the house, so he gets up, goes out the front door, and just waits near the front lawn, watching their being loud and pushing each other around. Mom's worried as frick and comes to get me, because she doesn't want him to get hurt by some drunk idiot, and I go out to see what he's doing. They end up pushing each other around more, and one bumps into the car, is leaning on it, and the hood of the car, Dad tells them to get away from it. They start taunting him, so he walks closer toward them, and one of the little bastards, clean, smashes the side mirror off while laughing at him. Dad is a 6'8" ex-basketballer, basically, is just all around frickin' huge and is small man. Bait on a normal day, Dad hit him straight in the jaw, and you could see as his jaw completely broke. Guy's immediately screaming and bawling his eyes out at the same time, while his friends pick him up and run away, but never heard from them again or got in any trouble for it. Dad just went back inside and watched TV. Story 4. My grandfather is a nice, funny, flirty guy. Was an exec at a manufacturing business after being the 3rd employee. Everyone gets along with him, and he was fairly well off in my small town. One day, my cousin and I are helping him with some work, and we go to the store. There is a lot of poverty in my hometown, and one of the poorer families was at the store. My cousin makes some comment, he was kind of a crapper at this point, about them being poor, and what were they doing at the store, because they couldn't buy anything or something along those lines. My nice grandfather grabs him and slams him against a wall and says, "Nothing in your life makes you better than them right now. I'd rather have them buy me than you." He then makes my cousin go apologize, and my grandfather announces, my cousin will pay for whatever they're getting. He makes my cousin work off the expenses for him to prove a lesson. And now that cousin is a stand-up social worker, specializing in poverty abuse and rehabilitation. Only time I have ever seen my grandfather be aggressive. He clearly said that little bastard more than straight. Some say Knock Thermal's cousin still helps the poor to this very day. Story 5. The kids booked it faster than I've ever seen anyone run and never booked my brother or cousin again. Then we all went inside and made burgers. The second time was in my angsty preteen years when I called my mother a bee. He turned at me, and I've never been so scared in my life. This time he was right pee and screamed at me until I was backed up against our bar counter, shielding myself with the bar stool legs. The second he backed off slightly, I booked it into my bedroom and barricaded myself in with all the furniture I could find. Didn't come out for a solid day until I got up the courage to apologize. But he's a teddy bear. But he's a teddy bear. Normally, hey, still a bear. Story 6 worked at a retail store. My manager was a very kind and soft-spoken man, about 5 feet 5 inches, and not scrawny, but not built. I never saw him lose his temper, except once a guy in another department was stocking shelves. Bill and he is in a wheelchair. A huge, gnarly-looking guy comes up and starts arguing with Bill about whether or not they have this or that, and the guy loses his temper. Tries to pull Bill out of his chair to beat him up. I was further down the aisle, but I started towards them because, frick no, you don't mess with Bill out of absolutely nowhere. Comes my manager, he flew out of thin air, and tackled this huge jagger to the ground, and after some fisticuffs, the butthole gave up, and my manager literally sat on his head until the police arrived some 15 or so minutes later. Story 7, gym class in high school. The quiet, nerdy kid kept getting picked on during dodgeball. One jerk kept hitting him with balls even when he was already out. The quiet kid wasn't tiny. He was about average size, maybe a little taller than average. He eventually lost his temper, ran across the court, and literally delivered a double-handed choke slam to the jerk being a bunch of teenage boys. We all lost our crap cheering for him. He got suspended for 3 days, but it was reduced to 1 day in school after a bunch of us went to principal and explained the circumstances. Story 8. Yeah, let's break the mirror off the 6 feet 8 inches guy's car. I worked with this theater director who was well known for being one of the nicest and most intelligent people you can meet. But there was one actor in this show who was a grade A pain in the butthole. She would constantly be late for rehearsals once she didn't show up at all. The reason was her girlfriend was in a car accident. But the problem was she didn't tell the stage manager, director, or anyone she wasn't coming. We found out through Facebook. This was a show with some deaf cast members and some hearing actors who didn't know ASL had to do some signing. So we brought in an ASL instructor. This woman, though, did know some ASL and thought she knew better than the college professor and would constantly try to correct her. We were doing spacing rehearsal in one of our touring spaces with very limited time. This is 2 months into the rehearsal process, and the director has finally had enough of her having a backhanded comment for everything. He adjusts her blocking slightly just because the space we're in is a bit different. She starts to say something, and the director just screams, "The show isn't about you, goddammit." And he throws his script to the ground so that pages fly everywhere. It's the first time any of us have ever heard him yell or curse in anger. She runs off stage crying. Then he calmly says, "Can we get back to work, please?" And then later during a break, I overhear him talking to her about how he is going to tell everyone he knows in Fiat never to hire her or work with her. Story 9. My grandfather was a man who rarely talked and never rushed. He once had a completely silent argument with mine. So they slammed the back door at each other until they broke the window in it that said he was a steel worker who worked for a moving company on the weekends. He was short but built like a brick house. When I was very young, I don't remember what led up to it, but I remember my father making my grandmother cry. Then I remember my grandfather charging in like a bull. Grabbing my father and pitching him across the house, my dad made the good decision and bolted as soon as he got up. That was the one and only time I saw my grandpap lose his temper. Story 10. Working in an auto parts warehouse. One of our managers was a very quiet, collected person. One particular day, some of the orders were wrong, and the ordering system was malfunctioning. He calmly goes out back, starts up a forklift, and rams it full speed at a huge stack of wood pallets. He must have thrown it in reverse, and repeated this about a dozen times, raising and lowering the forks appropriately. Everyone stopped working to watch as every last pallet was destroyed. When there was only a pile of wood scraps left, he turned off the lift. AskReddit calmly walked back in and continued working as if nothing happened. Story 11. My uncle is the most peaceful person I know. He's essentially a living version of what would happen if you combine Jenner and Iroh, Bob Ross, and Dr. Dolittle. He keeps a garden, feeds wild birds out of the palm of his hand, has been known to just walk up to a deer without it running away. I've never heard him raise his voice except to talk to someone really far away in my entire life. He was in the military during Vietnam. Not sure what branch, he never saw a combat zone. He was the guy who fixed stuff that came back from a combat zone. The war ends, he goes home and returns to his normal life, working at a tire factory. One night, he's getting off of a hard day at work and wants a drink, so he goes to the local bar. 3 guys are standing outside talking amongst themselves, and he goes to walk in, but they stop him. He tells them he doesn't want any trouble. He's just had a stressful day at work and wants to grab a drink. They go back and forth for a while, and eventually he just pushes past them to get in. They didn't like that and pulled him back, where he proceeded to knock one unconscious and floor another. The third backed off and let him inside. By the time he'd left, they were nowhere to be seen. He never saw a combat zone. He was the guy who fixed stuff that came back from a combat zone. They say that if you're special forces of some stripe or another, you never actually will claim you were in anything special. You'll claim that you were a fuel guy or a mechanic or anything else that's not glamorous. So I'm just saying. Story 12. I knew a girl who was living with a guy who had a severe anger management issue. He had kept it under control for the few years they had lived together, but one day he snapped over some minor issue, hit her repeatedly, banged her face in the concretes, and tried to choke her until a passery stopped him. So obviously the relationship was over, and she was going to fetch her stuff from the apartment. She likewise obviously didn't want to go alone. So me, 2 other friends and her brother, who I also knew, tagged along to keep things in check and to help carry stuff. When we arrive, her ex gives us attitude, which causes her normally extremely mild and docile brother to snap completely. He smacked the guy up against the wall with one hand and punched him repeatedly with the other, holding him up against the wall all the time, because you don't hit someone who is down. We just stood there in shock and awe, given the way the girl looked after the beatings she had received. Black and blue, bruised, her entire face scraped, choker marks around the neck and so on. We didn't mind much what was going on and just let him punch him out. Then we got her stuff and left as he started to wake up 2 times during the following months. The ex was jumped twice when moving outdoors in the evening. I don't know who did it, and I don't want to know. I guess everybody has their trigger. Story 13. My FIL is such a patient man. He's quiet, reserved, has a great sense of humor when my mill lets him get any words in. But my mill talks a lot. She will ask you questions, and when you start to answer, she talks over you and tries to answer them herself. It's infuriating and obnoxious. One time she asked me a question, and I started to answer her, and she cut me off to basically finish my answer for me and starts to ask another question. Lather, rinse, repeat for about 4 questions. Finally, my patient quiet sits back and watches the world. File just explodes on her, basically screaming at her. Mill, oh my God, let her actually answer the question you asked. Stop interrupting. You never let anyone finish their thought. It was glorious, and I almost tackled him to hug him. She still does it. But that day was amazing. Story 14. My dad was career Army as an officer. I have always known him as a soft-spoken kind, never gets angry kind of person. He rarely ever raises his voice that I know of. There is a law in the U.S. that basically protects any service member nearing 20 years from being forced out so they can get full retirement benefits. One day he gets a call from his commanding general telling him that he is going to be forced put due to budget cuts Army-wide. He got up out of his seat and started yelling at the general on the phone that it was impossible due to the law since he was in the safe zone. He started quoting section after section, yelling at the general, telling him he had fricked up and that it better be fixed a few days later. My dad got a call again from the general, and the first thing the general said was, "Before you say anything, let me apologize for the other day. You were 100% correct, but budget cuts are budget cuts." And as soon as my dad hit 20 years, he was retired. Story 15, I laughed. My dad has the patience of a son. You never see him get angry or put on off. He's quiet, calm, and so laid back, pretty much like me, even when we were kids. He never gave us a telling off at all. It was always Mom's job, as she was strict anyway. We were at the dinner table and me and my siblings were all bickering, not sure about what. All of a sudden, my dad slams his fists on the table and shouts, "Shut up." We all put our heads down in shock, as we never experienced this before. One by one, we started to giggle. Even our mom started giggling. We looking over to my dad, who was looking down at his plate, and all we could see was his shoulders going up and down, and of course he just burst out laughing. I think he shocked himself that day. But no one could take it seriously. Story 16. When I was in elementary school, I was being bullied at recess, and the teacher monitor wasn't doing anything about it. My dad didn't work a traditional office job. He made his own schedule, which let him have a lot of flexibility after getting the runaround at the school. He was referred to some bureaucrat at the district offices. Well, this guy did not want to meet my father. So despite my dad making an appointment, he wasn't in that day. Fun fact, that excuse doesn't work very well. When you have labeled dedicated parking spots, the appointment was at 2 p.m., so my dad blocked the car in, rolled down the windows, pulled out a book, and started reading at around 7 p.m. He hears the cough of a man who wants to get someone's attention while not being obvious about it. Oh, look at that. The bureaucrat showed up to the office and is ready for his 2 p.m. appointment. Good for your dad, suckers like that don't mind inconveniencing everyone else. It's like they have to prove how powerful they are because they are really small, petty, pathetic buttholes. Story 17. I didn't witness this, but my dad told me a story about his grandparents. My great-grandpa and grandma were British and came over sometimes in the 60s. I think my great-grandpa fought in the Somme during World War I and got captured by the Germans and held as a POW, so he had been through some crap. He was very quiet, generally pretty nice, but couldn't hear much. My great-grandma liked her sherry and was always nagging him and hassling him. So one day my dad and his siblings were at my great-grandparents' house. My great-grandpa was sitting in his chair by the fire, smoking his pipe. While my great-grandma was going on about something, he was generally just ignoring her when she grabbed one of those fire pokers and threw it at him. He had his hands resting on the arms of the chair, and the poker got wedged into the chair right in between his fingers, didn't hit him. So my great-grandpa, quietly and unfazed, got up, pulled the poker out, and put it back in its place, then sat back down and said, "We won't be doing that again now." Will we? Apparently my great-grandma was just petrified because he never said anything remotely confrontational. Your great-grandpa was a badass. Story 18. My father, who had a legendary temper and never lost it in front of me, was sued for malpractice by this insane patient and the epitome of ambulance-chasing lawyer. We were in the car, and we saw the lawyer, and my father said very evenly, although boiling with rage, "If you weren't in this car, I'd crash it right into that piece of crap, mother." Even today, 40 years later, I believe he would have done it. That was scary. Who won the lawsuit? Story 19. My little brothers are twins, fraternal M. Is emotional, high-strung, and always getting himself in trouble because he can't keep his mouth shut. P is the exact opposite, very calm, very rational, very quiet. At the time of this story, they were about 10. We lived across the street from the elementary school, and I was out of school. So I'd often chill on the front porch with a book and keep an eye on the kids across the street one day. I hear M's voice start to spin up. I look up and he's facing down some kid red in the face and about a step from swinging or crying. I'm not sure which. I get up and start to head over, and I've just stepped onto the grass across the street when M's antagonizer says, "Quite clearly your birth certificate was an apology letter from the abortion clinic." The twins know what an abortion is. M goes silent, shocked and hurt, and tears start to well up in his eyes. I'm furious, and a teeny part of me is laughing because holy crap, that one was new. But before I can say anything, here comes P with a flying punch straight to the side of this kid's head, knocked him right on his butt. M is shocked out of his tears. I'm flabbergasted over watching a 10-year-old perform an absolutely beautiful airborne sucker punch. P stands over the kid, practically snarling until I make it up to them. The kid sees P is distracted by me walking up and takes off. I march the twins back home. "I'm kind of proud of you, dude," I tell P, sticking up for your brother like that. P gives me the flattest look I have ever seen on a child. I wasn't protecting him. He says, "That's my birth certificate too." I wasn't protecting him. He says, "That's my birth certificate too," stone cold. Story 20, Greg versus Jimmy. This one guy who was in our year at school was gigantic. We'll say his name was Greg. Greg hit 6 foot tall at the age of 15 and had a beard coming in a few years before. That he was intimidating as heck, but he was the nicest guy I'd ever meet. I still have a ton of time for him all these years later, genuine model of a good person. Anyway, he was being teased all year by this of a boy. Let's call him Jimmy. Jimmy had some self-esteem issues and used to pick on younger kids constantly, but when he set his sights on gentle Greg, knowing he wouldn't retaliate, it got interesting. Jimmy was rarely in school but would still hang about the school gates with about 6 or 7 pals waiting for Greg to appear. Then bolt when he finally did one weekend. We were all out street drinking as you do, and Jimmy and company jumped. Greg went mental. A couple of Jimmy's pals held us back while Greg managed to knock 4 of the guys clean out before they brought him down. It was like watching the Hulk fight. Jimmy obviously bolted before the actual fighting began. The next Monday at school, he was back to his usual self again. Or so it seemed. I didn't witness the next part myself, but I wish I did. Greg hit Jimmy with an uppercut so forceful that he was launched across a school desk and was advised to leave education justice. Now I'm imagining Jimmy rocketing across the desk and landing at the foot of an official who shakes his head and intones, "Boy, I advise you leave education." Story 21. One of my school teachers was the most patient, kind man who would work with you until you got something, even if it meant he had to miss his lunch. There is this girl who was a mouthy little crap. She would mess around in his class repeatedly. He always kept his cool, even when she was being incredibly rude. Discipline never worked on this kid. I don't know how she didn't get expelled. One day she was drinking Coke in chemistry class, and he repeatedly told her, stop because we were messing around with chemicals, and there was a contamination risk, but she didn't listen after months of this kid giving him crap. He slowly walked over to her desk, picked up her Coke, and poured it over her head, then walked back to the front of class and carried on teaching. He got fired much to our protestations. Story 22. Back in uni, one guy I knew on greeting and small talk terms, but not much more, was known as the literal rock against the waves. Childish freshmen picked on him for being retarded et al. For ages, and he just shrugged it off. You need to imagine him as a gentle giant, 6 feet 9-ish, and arms as thick as my thigh, but very sweet and lovable hobbies included caring for shelter, kitties, and posting reviews for oddly specific music theory books online. I eventually became friends with him, and we hung out sometimes, grabbing a coffee and such, and one day we were avidly discussing something when 3 other childish freshmen came by and pestered him. He informed them twice that we were currently talking, and they should not disturb us, please, and thank you, with foreseeable success. So he just shrugged and tried to continue our talk over their pestering, frustrated that they did not succeed. One of them resorted to the last straw of a childish bully and called his mother a w***. Fun fact, his mother died when he was 14, and he never fully came to terms with it. He took a deep breath, stood up, and grabbed the offender by his head, swinging him like a club at the others and kicking them into next Tuesday when they all were on the ground, before I and 2 others finally could pull him off, and he instantly calmed down TLDR. An old giant from uni snapped and literally beat a mother. Oh, it's with another mother. Oh, Mom. When did it hit you? This is the moment I became a man. Story 1. When my wife was diagnosed with a terminal cancer, and I had to carry her, manage the house and bills and pets, and ensure that she would die well instead of in pain and terror, I did this while fighting my in-laws and my own father every step of the way because they either couldn't handle the situation, my in-laws, or thought they knew better than me what needed to be done. My father, I backed them all down, handled what needed to be done, and held my wife in my arms and sang to her as she died in peace and comfort. That was when I realized what being a man truly meant to me. Also, that was when everyone else around me truly understood I was my own man, including my father, and respected me for it. Respect, bro. Really eyes watering over here. Story 2. At age 13, my abusive alcoholic father threw me out. I spent a year being bounced between foster homes before I ran away from those. My older brother had left home for the same reasons and had moved to London. I went down to the ferry port in Dublin and hitched to Wales. From there, I managed to make it to London. My brother was 19, just a kid himself. He took me in and put me back into school. I was 16 before I realized he was working 3 jobs to support us and keep me in school. He made sure I got an education and completed college. That was when I realized what it meant and took to be a man. I'm raising my kids how he raised me. He was more of a role model than my own father ever could be. Your brother is a person we should all aspire to be. Thank you for sharing. I needed that. Story 3. After my ex lost the kids to Children's Aid, a year after our breakup, I flew back home, started my life over for the second time in a year, went to court for my angels to come home, and after a year and a half of court dates, finally had them come home with me. Now I work my butt off to make them happy, which in turn makes me happy. Been 2 years since, and although my social life is almost non-existent, I have 4 sarcastic kids that annoy me more than any group of friends ever could. Parents like you make me so happy. Story 4. When my father died and my mother, who has rapidly progressing Alzheimer's, needed support emotionally, physically, and financially because my older sister is not reliable and steals valuables and finances from my mother, I finally learned what it was like to be selfless. And I did and still do everything I can to support and take care of her. I stopped footing around, got my crap together, and put together an application for the EBU union so I can start making some legitimate money to help keep her in a very good assisted living facility, sign power of attorney documents, and other necessary things so I can take care of bills, real estate and properties under her name, and essentially fill the role of guardline. But no matter what I'm doing, I call her up multiple times a day and visit her every other day. Yep, those all sounded like a lot of adult words. Story 5. When I was 25 and realized that my best friend and girlfriend Rachel could pretty much never do anything to disappoint me, she was killed 3,000 miles away 1 year later in a violent motorcycle accident. Happiness is rare, but at least I found it once. I am so sorry for your loss. Story 6. At 14, I was invited to a huge party where the girl I had a crush on was going to be. That afternoon, my dad had a seizure and no one else was around. I called an ambulance, had to be with him the majority of the day, fill out insurance paperwork, and wait for hours in the emergency room for him to get back to normal. I realized that adulthood is foregoing the things you want for the things you need, and life sometimes shoots on you. Story 7. When my father with Alzheimer's was walking down the street lost, I put my hand on his shoulders and said, "Come on home, Dad." This is when it hit me that the parent becomes the child, and I needed to now be the man of the family. Story 8. My husband said it was when we got married and when he heard a strange noise in the middle of the night, and he was the one who had to go discover what was causing it, not his dad. This was similar to my moment it happened for me when I realized that if someone comes in my house, I am the only one between them and my family. Oddly enough, after I realized this, I started to sleep a lot less, and I became a much lighter sleeper. Story 9. Realizing that everyone is just a person that you can talk to as if they were your age, young and old. Everyone has either been your age or you've been their age. No point in being afraid to talk to people and figure stuff out. One of my first crap I'm an adult moments was when I was working the forge at a historical site and people were asking me for advice. Your classic tough-looking guy, probably mid-40s, was asking the skinny 18-year-old for advice with tools. Huge boost to my confidence first time I really felt like I knew what I was doing. Story 10. When I dated this one girl for a while and realized that, hey, this could be it, and started making real-life decisions like what do I do when I get out of the Navy, how will I support us and such, we broke up. But that was the moment. Mine was similar. The breakup helped in a way too, made me figure out how to stand up for myself and what I actually want for when it does happen. Story 11, I realized it more and more after I reached certain milestones: education, job, car, house, wife, children, etc. The more responsibilities that crept into my life, the more I realized I was perfectly capable of them all. Good for you, man. Hope you keep on realizing the same. I'm still stuck in the second one and really feel like half a man. Story 12. A friend of mine was in danger of relapsing into self-harm and had accidentally revealed that he was carrying a pencil sharpener blade. I stopped driving him home and had a 30-minute intervention in a mall parking lot until he handed it over. It made me realize that you can't afford to hesitate when someone's safety is on the line. Good on your mate. Story 13. When my uncle passed away, he and my grandma took me in from my abusive household and began raising me right. I was so inspired by his selflessness. Eventually, my sisters and my mom moved in with us to get away from abusive stepdad, and he took care of us all since all of the kids were young and my mom is disabled. I even asked him one day, "Uncle, why do you always work overtime? Isn't it exhausting?" He looked at me and said, "Yeah, it's tiring, but I have a family now. I gotta support it." When he passed away, I felt so lost. It was a horrible point in my life. But out of it came the most growth I've ever experienced. From it, I got my crap together in school like he always wanted. I always fricked around in school and it hurt him because he dropped out of high school. But I straightened out and shaped up. Also, I fixed his car that he had kept in the garage for 12 years. That car was his baby, a 2001 Honda Prelude. He and I always talked about fixing it to be my first car since I was almost 16, but he was so busy working, so I ended up fixing it myself. Now I have a pretty sweet car and I can drive stick. I even also got a job now too. To recap, I'm getting good grades, got a car, and I got a job as a mechanic at 17. I miss him every day, but I'm proud of all that I've done and will do. I know he'd be proud too. Sorry for the long post, just wanted to get it out there. He would definitely be proud. Story 14. When a park manager asked me at 10 p.m. while sitting in a playground smoking a bowl, "Aren't you a little old to be here?" Ha ha ha, awesome. My buddy's dad got caught with weed in Venezuela by a cop, and the cop was like, "Dude, or too old to be smoking weed, go home." Story 15, November 11, 2017. Girlfriend of 7 years diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, had the option to bail and run or sack up and take it head on. She finishes chemo the 10th of May and is in full remission. Good for you, man. I'm happy to hear that. Hope you guys have many happy memories together. Story 16. Then 3 days went by when I was in a bad financial situation, and I didn't eat any food just so my kids had a stomach full of it instead. I think my parents did the same when times were tough. Hope things turn out better for you and your family. Story 17, I'm still and will always be learning what it means. However, the older I get, the more I think it revolves around sacrificial loving gentleness, kindness, patience, and less about how much I can lift or even how emotionally strong I need to be for others. In fact, I think being able to show emotion is something men should be more proud of. Very underrated comment here. Being a man is just being an adult. Adults are the people children need. They are loving and kind. Story 18. I'm sure 5 years from now I'll have a new perspective. But just turning 26, it's happened recently. Growing up with a single mother, I think I needed to learn a lot about being a man on my own. At 24, I started keeping to myself much more. Cut out toxic people. Nearly all of my friends smoked a lot of weed, did some drugs, and did some soul searching. I came out of that a man that I loved. I was happy by myself, started respecting myself more. Now, 2 years later, good people have gravitated towards me. I have a great job, a house, and a fantastic support group of good people whom I love. I'm ready to meet a woman and continue this next wonderful chapter of my life. Just turned 24 yesterday and I went, I'm going through the same thing, basically. I needed to hear this. Story 19. The first time I heard "I'll Make a Man Out of You" from the Mulan soundtrack. Story 20. When I was a young teenager, I made a comment about how I was a man. My father looked me directly in the eye and said, "You aren't a man until you lick a woman's butthole." This may be the most underrated comment to date. Story 21. When my mother had a heart attack in front of my whole 30-plus people family and no one did anything, she looked at me in the eyes, silently, and this power took over me. I knew what she meant and what she needed me to do. I did everything. Called the ambulance when nobody wanted to, saying to me, "She'll be okay, just give her some water." We took her to the hospital. I sat down while she got her heart fixed. I didn't break a sweat. I didn't flinch. That day, I stood up against my entire family and took the decision I knew was right like a freaking man and saved her life. Story 22. Well, 22 here. And I'm still figuring it all out, that's for sure. But recently I've started to notice it's that point in maturity you realize that one. The world is so much bigger than just your life. Every single person in the world has a life just as complex as you do, as with memories and thoughts. And two, it's really not that hard to do the right thing. Sometimes it's really hard to do the right thing. In fact, for me, it's almost always harder to do anything than nothing. Doing the right thing is usually especially harder because I know it'll take more effort. But I guess that's where being an adult comes into play. Story 23. It's slowly been pieced together. One piece would be when I was a child and watched my dad confront people who were preying on people weaker than them. While everyone else stood and watched, afraid to cause a bigger scene, also watching him go outside to fix the heat or water lines for us in winter and not complain. I grew up around a lot of coal miners too. Watch them destroy themselves for their families. Being a pool bearer to a family member helping bury a family member, even though you hurt as much as anyone else there or more. Story 24. When I was a scared 20-year-old E1 in a gun truck pushing north to Baghdad, I realized then that to me a large part of being a man was to take actions that frightened you, but to do them anyway. This can be applied to other things besides war, like buying a house or becoming a father. You and I came to different realizations then. When I was a 20-year-old E3 pushing into Fallujah, I realized that being a man apparently meant killing whatever brown people the government was scapegoating that week in exchange for college money for a degree I don't really use. Weird. Story 25. Starving to death in my college apartment that I was getting evicted from, but making sure my dog had the food and seizure medicine he deserved and needed. I ate peanut butter for almost 4 weeks, but Buddy got his good stuff like always. He was a good boy and I couldn't have accepted failing him. Got back on my feet now, but lost Buddy to a bad seizure. I go talk to his grave every year. He made me realize that even when you've given up on yourself, you still need to be there for the ones who need you, and you got to keep pushing anyways. I'm sorry for your loss. Story 26. When I figured out that being a real man is BS, real people do whatever they want without trying to fit into any special predefined box that someone else seems to create. You can be a man that enjoys growing flowers, cooking art, or you can enjoy big trucks, gun steak, etc. Being yourself and doing what you enjoy and not caring what other people think is being a real person, man or woman, within reason, of course. Legal stuff. When my son was interested in cooking, people were asking if he was gay. I was seriously thinking, WTF. Some of the greatest chefs are men. Some people just have a warped perception of how things should be. Men don't belong in the kitchen, etc. A real man does what he wants. I'm a man, I do what I want. Even if it's considered feminine, childish, or whatever. I also don't judge other people for enjoying what they love to do. People that do, that are generally buttholes, if it makes you happy, do it. Why crap on someone else's happiness? Story 27. At 17, when I was alone and had to hustle to eat, pay rent bills, and help raise my younger brother without asking anyone for handouts. Story 28. When I got divorced, I realized that I could not blindly follow my ex-wife's dream of becoming a doctor and waylay my own goals. Standing on my own 2 feet has helped me understand the balance that I need to maintain as an individual and as a partner in future relationships. Story 29. I thought it was when I got laid for the first time in high school. Thought it was when I grew my first beard. I thought it was when I was legally allowed to drink. When I turned 19. Then I thought it was when I got a good job that paid decently. Thought it was when my parents split and my dad left, making me the oldest male around. Then I thought it was when I got my own house and a steady girlfriend and 2 dogs. I thought it was when I figured out how to do my own taxes and book my own dentist appointments. I thought it was when I bought a gun and a bow and learned to shoot. Thought it was when I killed my first deer. Thought it was when I won my first judo match. Does this make me a man? Being a man is more than that. It's doing the crap that's hard. Because it's hard, it's shutting up and doing the crap you have to keep your world still turning. It's doing what's right, not what's easy. It's sticking up for what you believe in. And more than that, it's being strong enough to admit when we're wrong. Being a man means you can swallow your hardships and keep moving forward. It's not quitting and not blaming anyone but yourself for your defeats. It's also asking for help when you need it. Being a man means taking care of the things in your life that mean the most to you and always working on yourself to be the best you can be now. Get out there and be the most awesome you men. It's doing what's right, not what's easy. Totally agree. The hardest choices are the most necessary. Story 30, I just crawled out of our wall cavity in an A-frame house. I was boarding up a gap where the mice are getting in. I found a hornet's nest that was never finished, super freaky spider orbs, and I actually started to feel okay being in there. Kneeling in the mouse poo, it was at this moment I see I am Penguin, became a man. Story 31. To change the question a little bit, I'm going to say that being a man has a lot to do with integrity, being able to stand up for what you believe in, and not to be swayed just because it's an unpopular opinion or because you're surrounded by people that don't think like you. The moment I felt like I knew what a man was is this. Just last year, I went through a lot with my family. I'm only 20 years old, but I try to make my family my parents, my brother and sister, and my grandparents my focus and inspiration in life. I try to do everything for them. Just last year, I had two older family members pass away, one of them being my grandma, my mom's mom. While everyone was mourning her death, I tried to be a strong point for my family. I tried to show them we should celebrate our life instead of mourning the loss. Looking back on how I tried to turn those frowns and tears into smiles and laughs while sharing stories about the great times we had with my grandma, that was the moment that I felt like I was beginning to know what a man was. Being able to be strong for others, being able to care for those so deeply that you can help them out of whatever they're feeling. Story 32, for me being a man isn't about material things or milestones that include money. Those who think owning something makes you a man is most likely still learning. Skip to the end for my short answer. Little backstory here, I had an amazing childhood with tons of freedom. I grew up in a small town and was raised old school. In my early teens, my home family had become damaged by several issues inside it out. My best friend had died of cancer at the age of 12. I dropped out of high school 2 days in and spent some time in the psychiatric hospital for my anxiety and depression, as well as my anger. Things became worse and I turned to alcohol and getting in fights. I never started fights, but I liked to end them. I liked the pain. This was a thing that went on until I turned 21 and stopped completely after I had completely lost it at a motocross event with thousands of people. I kind of blacked out, and when I came back, I was holding a beer can, which I had ripped in half to someone's throat. From what I heard, this man had been harassing people, and I was defending them. I nearly killed this man in my drunken state. After this day, no one was talking to me. Basically, being hated by most, admired by some. They were afraid. I knew that my habits had been because I was too manly to understand I needed to help myself. About a week later, I enrolled in GET classes and enrolled in college soon after that. To this day, I haven't touched alcohol. I haven't been in any fights. I control my anger every single day. I have a beautiful girlfriend that one day will be my wife. I honestly didn't think I would live to see this day. For me, being a man was the moment I could control my own outcome and own up to my failures. So in the end, I think becoming a man is when you can bring yourself and others out of any situation, be able to take charge, being able to say no, being able to love others without being ashamed, helping people when you need help yourself, being able to provide, handling emergency situations. I've done a lot of this lately. Being a leader and not being afraid to admit you were wrong. Story 33. After I turned 18, I had a good long think about it, and I realized that there's absolutely no meaning at all. Guys can be stone mask, they can be feminine, gay, straight, bi, sexual, whatever. Strong, emotional, creative, smart, ugly, handsome. There's literally nowhere to draw the line between manly and not manly. I think the real meaning is knowing who you are and knowing where you're headed in life, or at least having the will to work those things out. Identity is a strange, intangible thing. The majority of these answers directly apply to being a woman as well. We're really just all figuring out life and what it is to be an adult human. Story 34. When I was in high school, my dad worked full-time driving trucks and had his own business cleaning ovens for pizza places, usually from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. I used to complain that he dragged me along because I would be tired at school. Then I realized that he was more tired than me, but still kept going because we needed the money. Story 35. At various points, people began looking to me for answers. People at work, guys in social situations, women at events, people at random places in life. For the longest time, I thought it meant I was objectively a baller. It was just my lot in life. But as I grew, I came to interpret it as people in the moment trusting me with their well-being, and I started to reach toward honoring that trust. If I had to pick a moment, it would be when my boss, an incredible and amazing woman named Jessie, looked at me for direction in a setting outside of work. I'd never seen her take a passenger seat to the moment. She's such a baller that I realized in life people will sometimes look at me for answers because they trust my judgment as a man. I still sometimes think of the look in her eyes waiting for me to make a move so she could back it with me, because we were a team in that moment. Story 36, around the age of 10, 11, when my father and mother tried just about everything they could to frick my sister and I, up then they abandoned ship. From that point on, it was basically, if they did it, I probably shouldn't. Treat your spouse well. Treat your children well. Really treat everyone well. Be dependable. Be slow to anger and quick to forgiveness. That about does it. Story 37, I thought, getting married and having kids would give you the willpower to do anything, but that crap comes from within, bro. Story 38, mounting my first TV on the wall in my apartment. I put 14 holes in the wall before I found the stud. The TV covers it, so I'll chalk that up to a W. Story 39, it's a continuous thing. You always strive for a better tomorrow, and one day you wake up and see you are the man you wanted to be. Story 40, in the case of both me and my dad having to do a sheer amount of crap we don't feel like doing for the betterment of everyone else as a whole, and even if we don't like it, we still do because nobody else will. Story 41, watching my dad go to work daily, no matter what the weather, his ailments, or the time, all in order to give us a home with food and warmth and give us an epic Christmas and summer vacation. He is my role model to this day. Story 42, I like how Jesus displayed what a man was supposed to symbolize by washing someone else's feet. It's about sacrifice. It's not doing what you want to, but rather what has to be done. Not that I'm trying to imply women aren't capable of this. Story 43. Around the time my father attempted suicide, he had really been through a lot when he was younger. He got molested at around 16 by a family friend. No one believed him, and his militaristic father told him to keep quiet. My dad eventually dropped out of high school and got to get to join the army. From there, he got out and hit the road trucking, the old nomadic lifestyle kind of guy. He slept with pretty much any women who let him, as if he had to prove something to himself that he was a man. He got married to a girl and had a kid with her. She got my dad addicted to drugs, used to hit my father with stuff, and eventually did permanent damage to his shoulder blade. It was when my father hit back for the first time that he landed in jail for it. Once he got out, lost custody of his child, and had nowhere to go, he found my mom. He worked multiple jobs to support her. He married her when she already had 2 kids. He just wanted to be the father. No one else could be to him. He relapsed when that family friend who molested him got out of jail on other charges. He got addicted to drugs again and attempted suicide when I was a toddler. He tried again when I was 14. At that moment, watching my father slur his words and falling over because of the pills he took, I knew what a broken man really looked like. He survived and was in a mental hospital for a month and a half. I finally stopped letting my grades dip, stopped letting people walk all over me, stopped letting myself believe a breakup is all it took to make me miserable. I wanted to be strong, not just for myself, but for my dad. He is the reason I'll never let people walk all over me. He's my reason and my hero. No matter how many times he falls apart, I'll never stop loving him.